Now let's start with modifying our scripts. And the first thing that I'll do always before I start working with my code is actually I try to see whether Make has fully built my projects before I introduce any modifications. And I do this by typing make-n to make sure that, if I need to rebuild, that it doesn't do it immediately. So now I get the message, everything is built, and I'm good to go to start with some modifications. So the first modification needs to be done in the source folder, and instead of parsing 1,000 lines, let's parse like 2,000 lines, and then let's take away the prototype limit altogether. So I'll go to parse.py, and I'll open it with Atom here to edit the code. By the way, there's also a really cool tool and code editor available where you can open this as well and then also test run your code. And this one is called Spider. And the way I open this is that I go to Anaconda prompt and type Spider. Actually, I'll open a new Anaconda prompt. In Windows, I'll just do this by clicking up here, typing CMD, then enter Anaconda by typing activate. Instead, you could also just search for Anaconda prompt in your start menu. And then I type Spider with a Y. And then my Python editor, which comes shipped with the Anaconda distribution, is getting started, which provides a very convenient way also to edit Python code. So you can do it either in Atom if you're a little more fluent in Python already, but some of you may prefer Spider actually. So what I'll do now is I'll open my files by clicking first on Files and then searching my file folder. So my folders sit in Projects, my text mining. So I'll navigate there, navigate to Source Code and Data Prep, and double click on Parse. For some of you who may have been using Jupyter Notebook, this is not a Jupyter Notebook. This essentially is only the code part of Python. But some of you may be ready to move to this stage where you only enter the code and maybe put some annotations and some comments in your code. You need to have this in order to automize code. Automizing a Jupyter Notebook is a bit complex. It works, but it's not so efficient. So this is the parse code. And let me just read through it a bit. So it's opening some raw JSON file as a UTF-8 file to make sure the encodings are done right. And it opens an out file where I want to parse data in there. By the way, this has the same file name than the file name in the make file. And note again that I'm using these relative paths here, no absolute paths whatsoever. I'm writing some header here, ID, tab, created at, tab, text. And then I have a counter here, which iterates for each line that it finds like a JSON object in the file. And it converts my object to a JSON queryable object, and then gets the text, replaces the tab characters and new line characters so that everything is properly formatted in one cell when I open the file, and then it writes the stuff to the file. And as soon as the counter hits 1000, the loop breaks and stops. So recall again, I can test run my stuff by typing make or make-n to see if anything would happen. Make also gives the same message here. And now I can modify. So for instance, I can now parse 2000 rows instead of, for example, I can now parse 2000 rows instead of only 1000. And I click on save. I go back to my Anaconda prompt. I type make-n to understand what my workflow now would look like. And in order to build my final data set, the workflow would now run parse and text mining. Suppose I would run the overall make file, navigating to the project's main directory and typing make-n. It would actually execute the entire workflow, and even up to the point of running my analysis. Okay, so it would do Python parse and Python text mining because I've changed the parsing limit, and then it would run pre-clean again and analysis. So let me just do this by typing make-n. So now it parses 2000 rows, and here in text mining you see instead of 1000 rows, this actually goes to 2000. Okay, and it builds my entire project. So already while this code is running, looks fine. I can say like, okay, now I'm ready to leave the prototyping stage. I'll just comment out this line to like break and just parse my entire file and see what happens. Once again, make -n shows me that it would again have to, rebuild because I've just removed the limits here. And make would now start parsing, and now I'm actually interested to learn myself how many tweets are actually in this JSON file. I've actually never removed this prototyping condition, so this may take a while. So apparently there are like 7,000 tweets in here up to this point, but I get an error message. So yeah, because I've never done this before, probably I need to correct my code here. So apparently some of these texts don't work. So it makes actually sense of building in an error catch with my text blob object. So I'll open my text mining scripts right here, and I will wrap this thing here in a try and except phrase. And probably the final code that you will find on your site already has this built in here. And suppose that this cannot be done. It should enter an empty value to the cell. Let me see on whether this works the way I intended to work. So now that should be fixed. I type make. It's now only directly entering the text mining stage, and around tweet 7,000, I would now expect some error here. But actually the error should be resolved, and now it proceeds to 8,000, and now we can actually see how many tweets there are in total in this file. So let us wait a little bit. And now it has parsed, and now it's finally analyzing my data based on the full data set. And you can directly go to the gen analysis output folder to understand how the results have changed as a result of like removing this flag, commenting out the prototyping line. So the next part of this block of questions is to look at the parsing script and add the screen name of a particular user to it. And we gave you a couple of hints already in the file. So open the parsing script, this time in Atom, and I scroll down to where that happens, and I'll insert a new variable called screen name, which sits in the user's object, and the subnode called screen_name. Now I can add an additional tab to it and type screen name. That is the name of my variable. Let me scroll down a little bit for you to be able to see it. And I will also add it to the header row. So created X, tab, screen name, tab, and then ultimately the text. So now I can go back to Anaconda prompt. This time I don't want to run the entire workflow. Let me go to my source folder and my data prep folder and run make n. So make again figures out it needs to parse and then do text mining. So by typing make now, the parsing workflow happens, and also the text mining workflow happens. And after parsing, a couple of thousand tweets, the workflow will finish here, and I'll have my finally prepped data set sitting in my gen data prep output folder. So thanks for watching and trying out with our practice questions here. Thanks a lot.